I have insurance, and so I don't need to focus on anything else other than just my physical well-being, because a bike is completely replaceable. And the fact that you have insurance and that you're protected and you're covered, all you need to do is focus on yourself and getting yourself better. Like, I'm going to try and I'm going to take risks and I'm going to take chances, because why else? Why would you not, right? I'm Alicia Speak. I'm 37. I'm a full-time lawyer, but I'm also a cyclist for Cycle Team London.
Introducing to you, I'm sure, but I'll do it anyway. A proper legend on two wheels, more than an innovator, but he is a brand ambassador for Ribble Bikes, Sean Yates. We've also got Richard Bryne from Speedplay. Frederick Hallander from POC. Castelli's Steve Smith. Nick Larson, the founder of Fabric and creative director at Cannondale. He's with us today as well. And from Exeter, Gustav Röken. That's our panel for this afternoon's little chit-chat. I'll start with you, Sean. How and when did you get involved with Ribble Cycles? Is this a new thing for you?
Relatively new, yeah. It's about a year ago now. I was in Spain riding with a friend, and I was having a particularly bad day. And I thought, this is just not enjoyable anymore. He's having to wait for me the whole time. I can't talk because I'm trying to not slow him down. I'm thinking,
I bet that was a new experience for you, wasn't it? And not a great one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting on a bit, don't forget. But I thought, I'm going to need some assistance. I need an e-bike to make these rides enjoyable, not only for myself, but for anyone else who's riding with me, So, I went on the internet, had a look around, decided the Ribble one looked really nice, contacted them, and here I am today. So, yes, it's been a great assistance for me to have this, the ability to ride with others now, whether it be my neighbour or even on my own, obviously, when my health has been not great.
You were saying that a couple of days ago you had a nice long outing.
Yes.
But without the e-bike, would you not really be in the position that you're in now? Has that really kick-started you into getting back on two wheels?
I have been on an e-bike before the Ribble one, but that was a mountain bike when I was coming back after a bad accident. So it just enabled me to get out on the road and not feel like you're starting from zero. Just it's like you ride with a nice strong tailwind, or someone just giving a gentle push from behind. So no, it enabled me to get back on the road, really, get the motor turning, then you build up, and then hopefully eventually I'll be back on a normal bike.
For a brand like Ribble, are e-bikes the way forward? Is that the big thing now?
Well,
I was going to say the next big thing, but it's here already, isn't it?
It's here already. I mean, certainly it's been a couple of years now at least. Well, certainly this year it's kind of made a lot of waves. I think living in Spain, I see a lot of guys on mountain bikes, e-bikes. It certainly enables people to go out in a more, feeling more comfortable, rather than think, okay, I don't really fancy it because I'm lost fitness, or I'm a bit overweight now, and so on and so forth. So it's definitely opened up the possibility for a lot more people to enjoy bike riding. I mean,
you don't look much different when you're racing, to be honest, Sean.
I know, but looks can be deceiving. Time waits for no one. Getting older, getting weaker, but still, obviously I try and look after myself to make the actual, when I do go cycling, easier. It's still all about watts per kilo, even when you've got an e-bike.
Yeah, and I suppose as time goes by, these bikes get, for want of a better phrase, slimmer and slimmer. They don't look so cumbersome. Brian Robinson, I know, is another person who uses a Ribble e-bike, and I had a chat with him last month. What's he now, 80? He's well into his 80s.
Yes.
And he was saying basically without that he wouldn't be able to ride. So e-bike has really kept him going. But he said, to be honest, his e-bike now weighs the same as his actual road bike did in 1955 or whenever it was anyway. So he's quite used to it. So it's not really an issue for him. How difficult is it, do you think, for brands these days to stand out? I know Ribble have they've had a big rebrand, haven't they? They've had a real slimming down. is it a very tight, difficult marketplace?
Well, I think every market in every area in all departments is getting tighter and tighter. To be successful, the competition is tough. You need to be always moving forward, rethinking strategies, and comparing yourself to the best brands out there. And obviously, Ribble, as we know, is the oldest British bike company, and they were kind of going down a dead-end street, I think. And they, 20 years ago, everyone wanted a Carnago. Carnago have taken a back seat. Now it's Specialized, Canyon. They want to be competitors to them, but to be competitors to them, first you have to have a quality product, and then you have to make it desirable. I think with the rise of popularity of cycling in the UK, it's no longer kind of frowned upon to have a British bike. Whereas before, people were always after a fancy brand. Ribble is a great product, quality, and also desirable, and that's what they're pushing forward. And I think they're achieving their goals.
So you're rebranding, putting the best foot forward with technology that's already there.
Yes, I mean, and quality. People they pay good money. You pay money. You want a quality product. We've seen that. You want quality. You don't want a telephone that breaks down after 5 minutes. You want quality. Obviously, you can buy quality sometimes, but only at a price. Ribble, a quality product, not a massive price tag.
We like quality, and we like innovation as well, don't we, Richard? That's really your thing. I mean, people had never really seen anything like the Speedplay pedal when that came out. I mean, how did you?
I brought an example.
Yeah, well, how did you persuade people that they really needed something like that looked like a lollipop?
Oh, it was extremely difficult because when we first came out with it, it was so different looking than anything anybody had ever seen before that it was shocking. And I think that the general perception is, how the hell will that work as a bicycle pedal? It doesn't look like one.
And it's a very traditional sport as well, isn't it?
It's a very traditional sport. So our secret for getting people to try it was face-to-face demos. We went to a lot of events, and we used a turbo trainer and got people to hop on for just a minute or two, and it sort of broke through the visual part of it, and it felt like what they were used to. And then it turned out that it had all kinds of features and benefits that weren't available with other brands. And the big difference that we brought was double-sided entry. So you didn't have to step down and flip it over to get in. You could just, you didn't even have to look down. All you had to do is put your foot on the pedal and engage, and you could take off very quickly. And that got a lot of people started. And then what really helped us was the growth of triathlon. And it wasn't a traditional market. It was people that were just looking for performance and user-friendly, safe products. And if it hadn't been for triathlon, we probably never would have made it in the very beginning, because that was the first market that embraced the technology, and then it slowly worked its way onto the road. And then once we got into the pro peloton, is
that the difference maker in many ways? If you've got somebody like Sean winning races and using the product,
it makes a big difference. There's no question about it. People look for validation, and
Did you get it quite quickly?
No, it took several years, but we started with small teams, and we got a lot of grassroots teams, and then they started racing in Europe, and a key influencer was Bjarne Riis. And it's a great story, really, because Cervelo and Speedplay started with Bjarne at the same time. And we brought Andy Ording in from Zip, and so we had these 3 innovative brands that were all kind of cutting-edge technology, but not traditional. And I think Team CSC was ranked number 14th in the world when we all signed on. And then as they became more and more successful, we rode that wave, and it was a huge launching pad for all 3 companies.
Some innovations are going to be more successful than others. Some will take off. Some will take off in different ways than perhaps you envisaged. I mean, that what you've got in your hands not the only thing that you really come up with? I mean, what about some of the other things that maybe went in a different way to which you might have expected? Home trainers, I'm thinking of possibly?
Yeah. So my first invention, the first patent I ever got was for the turbo trainer. So the name turbo trainer was my name, and the turbo trainer was my first product. And it was a huge success. I mean, before the turbo trainer, people trained on rollers. And so I had experienced bringing a kind of a revolutionary design to the market, because it was really difficult trying to convince people to give up rollers, which had been around for almost 100 years, and switch to a stationary wind trainer device. But it
wasn't hard to get me off rollers, to be fair.
It was
really concentrate to stay upright.
It allowed people to just focus on developing power. And one of the things that was instrumental in my background, because I came into the industry as a bike racer, and I have no education as a designer or an engineer or anything, but I got recruited to race human-powered vehicles. I won an audition for going the fastest on an ergometer, and I started working with a scientist, and he taught me a secret that I've never told anybody until tonight. And that is that there are only two ways to develop speed or improve speed, and it's really simple. You either have to increase power or reduce resistance. And that's all I needed to know. And I focused my education on learning as much as I could about the four resistances: aerodynamics, rolling resistance, mechanical resistance, and gravity or weight. And on the physiological side, I focused on biomechanics, and what I learned was the body was basically a bunch of motors and levers. And if you can optimize the position of the body on the bicycle, you can go faster. And then combining that with reducing all of the resistances, it was a winning formula for designing things. And so I just got my 26th patent this year, all using that secret formula. And now that I'm retiring, I feel like it's a big enough thing, I'm giving it away, and everybody can can use that formula, because it works brilliantly.
And part of that will be in your thinking, Frederick, with POC, no doubt. I mean, one of the first big projects that your company had, I mean, we all know POC helmets, don't they? They are Marmite, aren't they, in many people's views, because they are very distinctive, and people either love them or they don't. But the first project in cycling terms, certainly the first one that springs to mind for me, was a specific one, talking about reducing resistance, that you were working on for the Olympics in London in 2012.
Yes, we were asked by the Swedish Olympic Committee to help Gustav Larsson with a helmet that could help him win the gold in London. So what we did was that we put him in his race position on the trainer. I took some photos with a tape measure, and I then sculptured him on his bike in my CAD system. And then on top of him, then I shaped the helmet to make him the fastest biker possible.
So that was purely what you were trying to do. Your remit was to try to come up with what was the fastest helmet, no matter what it looked like.
Exactly. So looks, he didn't care anything about the looks. So and neither did we, because for us it was super important to win that gold as well, to pave our road into the road bike scene. So that was kind of...
He fell off, didn't he?
He did. So that helmet
that wasn't quite in the plan.
Was never proven to be fast at that time. But I think right now it's actually been proved that it is a fast helmet. So
going forward, like since then, I mean, I think the company really first came to prominence in the pro peloton with Garmin in about 2014.
Yes.
So since that time, since 2012, 2014, we mentioned distinctive style of your helmets. Is there a pressure to keep them in that same vein, that same style? I mean, there's got to be presumably there's a creative tension between the design, what it looks like, the aerodynamics of the helmet, which is obviously important, but also safety? How do they sort of fit in with each other?
I mean, that helmet we built for the Pro Tour 14 for the Garmin team, the Octal. The three main key features was, first of all, safety, and then lightweight and ventilation. Those were the buzzwords at that time, and nobody really spoke about aerodynamics for this type of helmet. So we focused really on just making it as safe, light, and ventilated as possible. It was really a struggle for us to find the design language that suited POC in this arena. We came from ski racing, mountain biking, and we didn't know at all what a POC helmet should look like in the road bike scene. So,
and Gustav, on the end here, Exeger, your company, you've gone into a collaboration with POC recently, I think I'm right in saying, or you're about to. Can you explain what it is that you bring to the table, and practically in layman's terms, for somebody like me, exactly how it would be put to use on something like a helmet like that?
Absolutely. You mentioned before about convincing the users that they need new inventions, and some sales are much easier than others. For instance, would you like eternally powered portable devices? Absolutely, because everyone thinks it's a hassle to charge their devices. So what we've done.
So are they solar-powered headphones?
These are solar-powered headphones, so they have an eternal battery life, and they actually charge in this light right here, right now. Wow. So what we are doing with POC now is that we are bringing this technology into the helmet world. So POC will release Exeger-powered smart helmets next year. So our cells, what's unique about them is not just that they charge in any light condition, but also that they can be seamlessly integrated into any device, be it headphones, helmets, or IoT
So if it was in there, you wouldn't see it?
Exactly. It will be a natural, integral part of the helmet itself. So we can bring new functionality into devices without affecting the design, the aesthetics.
And is one of the things, as simple as powering a light on the back of the helmet, for example?
Could be. I mean, we are an enabling technology. We bring an increased power budget to the producers like POC. And what they then choose to do with it is up to them. I mean, there have been several attempts with crash sensors, etc., in helmets to gather information in case of a crash. What happened? How was the helmet impacted? But that means you need to have a battery, and the battery needs to be charged until now. So now this helmet can have eternal battery life without the user actually changing their behavior in any way. So we enable companies like POC to gather information from real-life crashes, for instance, to help improve the design and bring out new, really cool and safe products for the future.
Well, so exciting developments in hand for what people wear on their heads when they're on two wheels. Steve Smith here from Castelli. I mean, the one thing that really stands out, I think, for many people in the room, certainly for me, I mean, Castelli is such a brand with real heritage that we all know, and it has such a strong mark with it, which I guess must be a help to you when you're bringing any new product out. But the Gabba jacket is the one that really stands out in recent years for many people, I think.
Yeah, for us as well. I mean, that's a jacket that came along almost by chance. We were talking with the Cervelo test team riders, focus group on the guys of what they need for racing in cold and wet. And we spent 45 minutes talking about how to make their rain jacket better. And then Gabriel Roche, he's Norwegian. And so this is in August of 2009, and he'd never said a word all year long. But then he raises his hand, and he says, yeah, a lot of times for racing in the cold or in the wet, it's not that cold. And so to put on a big floppy rain jacket, you're going slow, you're sweating on the inside, you're getting wet anyway. What I need is something more aerodynamic just to keep my core warm. And he pulled out an old jacket he had, or a vest from his days on Crédit Agricole. It was really just a plastic bag. I mean, it was terrible. And so talking with him about how to make something like that better, we came up with the idea for what turned into the GABA. So,
and do you need, again, with the development of something like that, do you need a race with a really dreadful conditions like a Milan San Remo in, 2013, something like that, where suddenly everyone's like, oh, that's the product, I really need that. I need one of those, even if I've got to buy it myself at this stage.
Yeah. No, up until that day, in the entire world, we'd sold like 1,500 GABAs. And then I think there was probably 150 of them in that race. So most of the GABAs we sold up until that point were probably bought by pro riders. And then, that day just completely changed everything for it.
Can I say, they're not actually the commentator's friend, though, those jackets. They're the bane of my life. Because basically, as soon as it starts raining, for example, in the World Championships, you've already got all of the riders wearing a different jersey to the one you see them in for the rest of the year. So you're just getting your head around that. Starts raining. They all grab those jackets. They all zip them up. They're all in black. All the numbers are covered up. So, that's great.
Actually, we have a plan for that next year.
Good, yeah. A few more colours would be really good. One more question I wanted to ask you before I just speak to Nick. Looking after the planet's important, obviously, and coming into people's thinking now far more. Was talking to a university professor only last week about the fact that they're talking about not just trying to deal with plastics in the oceans and bottles and things, but actually one of the biggest issues is the very small particles that come out every time we wash our clothes, that they get into the water system, they get into the rivers, they're in the water that we drink, and working with clothing companies to try to reduce that. I mean, how are you involved? Are you involved in that kind of issue?
Well, an awful lot of
recycling.
Well, an awful lot of the small particles are coming from a brushed fleece where they're pulling up the yarns and then cutting it, so they're creating a lot of microparticles. Here we're using almost exclusively staple fibers, which is a continuous fiber that lets off much, much less. And we are concentrating a lot of effort. We're very close to eliminating poly bags in our packaging, which will be 3.5 million poly bags, or 3.5 million bags that aren't out there anymore. I mean, that would be enough to completely cover, I think, the London metropolitan area that we're going to save. We're focusing on some real things that will make a real difference.
Nick, currently the creative director at Canada. You've seen both sides of the whole business, haven't you? Starting up from something very, very small with Fabric, the founder of Fabric, and now working in presumably a much bigger environment with a major mark like that.
Yeah, it's been a sort of a crazy journey. We started Fabric about 10 years ago, and to start a small company, there's only a couple of us working on it in England, and try to make our mark was a difficult kind of task. But what we did was we focused on innovation, and your talk about is all about innovation. We focused on innovation and marketing. They were the most important things. And we spent a lot of time thinking about what products we should look at. And it's interesting hearing the other guys talk about products. But for me, the biggest kind of area of contention for a cyclist, especially a new cyclist, is actually the interface between the bike and the person. And that was saddles. And saddles can be a huge bone of contention for someone cycling. It can be the barrier for them cycling. It can be the pain point, or if you don't notice it at all, and then it's fantastic and you don't think about it. So that was somewhere we wanted to focus on. But the tough thing, being a small business, is trying to manufacture something that's innovative, that's different, working with big companies in Asia that work with all the big brands like Specialized and Bontrager and places like that, coming up with different ways of making these products. So we had some great ideas for designs, but the factories never wanted to make them. They said you couldn't make them.
Do you also come up against the UCI governing body, the way that what you're allowed to do quite a lot?
Well,
you feel like you're banging your head sometimes?
We kind of ignored that to start with because the focus was to try to make the experience of cycling better. But we didn't really get a lot of help from the manufacturers. So actually what we did was we called upon other people that were cyclists that worked in different industries, and we used Airbus, who obviously make airplanes, to help us design a saddle and manufacture a saddle that was uniquely different and did bring real benefits to the cyclist. But then it was all about how we get that in front of all of you guys. And we didn't have the money to get the best pro rider, so we had to go out there and think of innovative ways to push the product. And slowly but steadily, we grew a base of customers. And I think that what really turned for us was the fact that social media and the digital landscape really made a huge difference. And it went from being super important to have rider endorsement to being all about consumer endorsement and word of mouth and people talking about your brand. And social media really made a huge difference for Fabric and then elevated the brand and got us in front of the audience we wanted to by real people who had bought the product and experienced it and enjoyed it.
Briefly before we go, your role with Cannondale now, what does that involve?
I would say my role with Cannondale is bringing some of the small business mentality to a big business. So we've made some quite big changes with Cannondale, with a word mark, and I think most of you will see with EF, there's no more green there. Cannondale was all about green. We've made some sort of significant changes, but there's a lot more to come. But we're bringing kind of a small business mentality to a relatively big business.
That's great. A lot more to come. And there's a lot more we could have spoken about as well. But we've run out of time. It's absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much for your time, everybody. Please, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for our great innovators. Next up, after a short break, Matt Stevens will be back on the stage and he'll be chatting to